Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Saida, and this morning we're going to talk about the Desire Song of Eros, which is actually a chapter in my book, Desire. But what I wanted to do is to start out the year doing a training series. That's not today, but I'm going to speak about it later, where we're going a much deeper dive into this together. So today what I want to do is to talk about the Desire Song of Eros, which is a very specific song of desires. There's actually 6 unique desire songs. Today will be about Eros. We'll cover other songs in a few weeks, but for now I want to focus on Eros. And I want to focus on Eros because it's so enlivening and it's so controversial, and it can go from the spectrum of such beauty and bliss and refinement all the way to horrors. So this range. And today, the focus that I want to have around the Desire Song of Eros is, are you connected to it? So that's the first question. Are you connected to it? What is your relationship with it? How are we misguided, and how can we get back into right relationship with it so that we can actually create the life that we love with vitality, with connection to ourselves? So that's what we'll do today on this call. I'm going to be looking at the comment section. So if you feel like leaving any comments, any questions about specifically the Desire Song of Eros or anything I'm going to be talking about in the next few minutes, please feel free to write. If you're watching this as a replay, hello and welcome. For everybody, Happy New Year. If you haven't, this is your first time back after the holidays, then I hope you had a really beautiful holiday. I just spoke to someone who lost a loved one during the holidays. So it was very tough holidays. So holidays are not always easy on us. However, way that it happened for you, I hope that the 2019 bring you a lot more peace and joy, and definitely a lot more connection to your desire. There's a reason why I want you to be connected to your desire. So I'm going to start by just reading a tiny section in the book, and then I'm going to dive in. So this is from page 64. To be clear, our sexuality isn't a commodity, something for us to trade and bargain with. Our sexuality is our own aliveness. It is the animating force within us, as well as in all living beings. The desire for sex is a song as old as existence. This song lives beneath the calculating eye of all our scientific and mathematical formulas and theories about life. Without Eros, there would be no life. I mean, let me say that again. Without Eros, there would be no life. Desire for sex is essential, but the problem lies in sex becoming a currency, one that even the poorest person can use to cash in. This is far off the mark. So I'm going to end there. If you have the book, you can go and look at that section. If you don't have a book, I'll leave a link where you can get the book, but basically desirethebook.com is a great place. But what I want to talk about is how it's very hard to talk about our desire for sex in a way that's not charged. And I want to clear a little bit of things around that today so that we can feel really good about this desire. It is one of the most our sexuality, our sexual desire is one of the most misunderstood pieces of being a human being on the planet right now. It is so misunderstood, completely misused in so many ways. And so what this little section was indicating is that often we will use sexuality as currency. And so I want to break us out of that, right? And then once I establish that, we're going to move into how we can have the right relationship for more freedom and more vitality. So I'm seeing a few of you here. Hi, welcome. It's so awesome to have you here. All right, so how do we, first of all, I want to establish that what we know about like sex right now, like what you understand and know about sex, for the most part, has been conditioned. It's part of the social collective, the familial beliefs, the community beliefs that you're surrounded in. We have very strong opinions about sexuality, and probably because it's such a powerful force, right? I mean, it can lead to the miracle of life. That's where it can go. It's a powerful force. people feel overwhelmed by the intensity of it at times. And at times we can see that it's getting misused because of that overwhelm. It's like overriding our cognitive abilities to think when there's that much sexual desire. So what do we do about that? Because that's the problem I wanted to talk about, where it can go wrong, just to kind of name it. There's a lot of other issues with it. I mean, in my line of work, I'm looking at sexual sovereignty. I'm looking at sexual trauma. I'm looking at all the issues of being a woman from birth to elder, and what happens in our conditioning that makes us so alienated from our very own aliveness. So let's do this now. Let's redefine sexual desire, sexuality, this experience of ourselves as sexual beings. And let's change the word sex entirely. So for the rest of this Facebook Live, I'm going to be referring to sexual desire as aliveness, because actually that's what it is. It's, if you really could remove all your ideas and ideals around sexuality and you just sat in the energy of it, how it actually translates into your body, it's a sense of aliveness. Things start to feel alive, and we want that. Okay, so we want you to feel alive. That's the primary piece that's very important. And in ancient cultures, and specifically I'm going to refer to the Taoist culture, but there's also other lineages that had this, there was a reverence for the power of this aliveness, this life force that was moving through the body. And many systems and techniques and different lineages were created to harness this power. So in our modern culture, we've moved so far away from that the best we can do for sexuality is to treat it almost as a currency. I'll do this in exchange for that, or whatever the bargain is, right? This happens so much, and it happens a lot unconsciously because it's part of the collective conditioning. So today I want to mention it. I want to remind us that our aliveness, our desire is so healthy, and it's really important. Now let's look at the importance of it. Some of you may feel like you have zero connection to sexual desire and you don't want to be connected to it. And I want to say that the things I'm about to suggest isn't going against that. It's simply, I'm inviting you to consider the Desire Song of Eros in a bigger picture. And it doesn't mean that I'm suggesting that you go out and have sex after this video. You could do that, but it's not what I'm indicating here. So the Desire Song of Eros is really important because one of the things that it's doing, it's putting us in touch with a really strong current in our body that kind of bypasses the modern mind. This is a very old impulse to connect sexually, to feel this aliveness of life. And you could say in some ways, Eros cares very little for our conditioning, cares very little for all our theories about it, all our limitations around it, all of those things. Eros lives separate from that. So that's where this conversation can get tricky, because where's the pure essence of this desire? And then where is it when it goes through all these filters? And how do we even have contact with the pure essence of it when there are so many filters? When the majority of what we know and understand about our own sexual desire has been stuff that we've learned outside of ourselves, and we've never really sat back and given ourselves the time to consider it. Even, like I said earlier, for those of you where sexual desire is not on the table and you're not interested and you don't feel like you want to partake in that, I want you still to consider this. The Song of Eros, it's not indicating, when you feel sexual desire, it does not indicate that you must take sexual action. It is part of that, but it's not the whole picture. This experience of desire is meant to enliven you. And it can be incredibly frustrating for people to feel turn on in a really powerful way and not express it immediately. It's partly we are an instant gratification society. So when we feel something, we want to relieve it instantly. That's in part to do with it. The other is that we just don't have the understanding. We don't have the tools to actually use this experience of turn on to fuel our inspiration, to fuel our bodies, to heal our bodies, to maybe have a reconnection with ourselves. This is very important. And I want to talk about that because with a lot of the clients that I have around the issue of sexual trauma, there's often a difficulty that emerges around sexual desire because now sexuality is associated with pain and terror. And that's a very deep topic. So I'm not going to go into that today, but I am doing a training and we're going to go a lot deeper into a lot of these points next Tuesday. So if you are interested in diving a lot deeper into these topics, we're going to be doing that in a private group. It is a paid training. It's live and it's going to be next Tuesday. We will go deeper. So if you're one of those people who are like, hey, you're not explaining enough, I want to know more about this, then definitely come on Tuesday. But what I want to say about that is in all the years that I've worked with women, and it's been 2.5 decades, something like this, including healing my own body from very severe trauma. I mean, trauma that basically I was told I had 2 weeks to live post this trauma, this sexual trauma. And so how did I reintegrate? I'm not going to teach all of that right now in this moment, but what I want to say is we could use as a society an up-leveling of our knowledge around this potent power, this deep desire. And we could bring into the collective mindset, especially with young people, and then let it, mature and blossom. So another part of the chapter where I just was reading you in this book is that I talk about the 5 evolutionary stages of Eros. We go through 5 natural stages where we're maturing erotically. We never talk about this. And it's very important to talk about it because it's part of our grounding of being at home in our own bodies. And I don't know if you've noticed, but your genitals kind of go with you everywhere you go, and they're with you in every instant of life. So they're not separate. Your sexuality cannot be separated from the rest of your being. It doesn't mean that you're sexually active in all areas at once. But how then do we integrate this deep need, sexual desire, like yearning with everyday life, with all these filters, etc.? So that's what today's about. I want to make a case, and it's an invitation for you to start noticing the small moments where you feel lit up. And I want you to acknowledge them to yourself. This is an experiment I did many years ago because I'd read a research study that said that even healthy women who've never had trauma, when they were doing this study, they were self-selecting, kind of indicating when they were aroused and when they were not aroused. There was a device that was measuring arousal inside the vagina, as well as their heart rate, etc. And the results were very interesting. Across the board, a lot of the time, even the healthy women did not realize when they were aroused. So what that indicated was that there was a conditioning that happened that separated our conscious mind, the part of us that cognates and sees and understands, with what was actually happening in our visceral bodies. And this is important. I actually think this impacts men as well, but the study was specifically done on women. So what this is indicating is that there is an opportunity, and this is what I've seen time and time and time and time again in bringing the concept of erotic innocence, the concept of erotic activation, of erotic exploration, of erotic expansion and erotic wisdom. Those are the 5 stages that you'll find in the book. when I bring those concepts into a conversation. It's like a spaciousness is allowed to exist now for us in our orientation around our own desire for sexuality, for sensuality. And that's important. Sex isn't an on-off button. It isn't something that's just meant to design like two bodies mutually masturbating, although that happens and that's fine. But there's just so much more. And when we can understand that we're sexual beings, which means sometimes we'll engage in the act of sex, but all of the time we are sexual beings. What that allows us to do is to sit and really own our sovereign space, this body, and really own there's an aliveness that is moving through it at all times, whether or not we experience it as genital arousal. And as I said earlier, a lot of women they don't even know when they're aroused. So looping back, the exercise that I want to leave you with, one of them today, is to start tracking when you notice that there's a physical sensation of arousal. And I want you just to be able to note it to yourself. You're like, oh, I'm turned on right now. Interesting. And here's why. There's going to be weird moments where you're turned on. And often because the moment is weird, what I mean is maybe you're just standing in line at Starbucks, or I don't know, maybe you're doing the dishes by yourself in the house. It's like random. But the more you can track when it's happening, the more you rebuild the neural pathways between the conscious mind and what's going on in the pelvic floor. This was huge for me. And I actually remember feeling sometimes a little uncomfortable. I'm like, gosh, I'm aroused now. It's not that appropriate right now. And that's where we can rest in the knowing that we don't have to do anything with the arousal. So the second piece I want you to consider today, which is very important to me, and we'll go in a lot more detail on Tuesday in the live training. But for now, I want you to really take this and contemplate it. You are not responsible ever for another person's turn on, and no one is responsible ever for your turn on. And let me break that down, because this is where women get really in bad situations. So if someone is aroused, I remember being at a party and there was a very aroused man at this party, and he was expecting reciprocity. He was expecting I would be aroused. He was expecting that something was going to happen between us. And I remember distinctly not feeling aroused, certainly not about him, and definitely not about the party. But I also had spent enough time in solo cultivation. This is a very important part of the maturity process, to learn to cultivate our own desire and our own sexual feelings and our own pelvic floor and vaginas, like the whole thing. We need to learn to cultivate that. That's part of the maturation process. Because I had done that work, I was able to stay in my sovereign space in a very powerful way and speak to him and basically say, I won't be joining you in that experience, but don't feel like you have to stop on my account. I just want to be clear that I won't be joining you in this experience at this time. And you know what was amazing about that? Excuse me, I need to cough. Excuse me. Was that he quickly, obviously stopped being aroused and put his clothes back on. But what was amazing about that is I didn't use shame. So he didn't experience shame, and neither did I. I didn't use anger, because I actually wasn't angry that he was aroused. Like, why would I be? That's kind of strange. I mean, he's allowed to be aroused, and I'm allowed to not be aroused. And I also didn't go into fear, because I understood that I could make choices that were good for myself and take a stand for them. And the foundation of that is the knowing that I'm not responsible to have to do anything about anyone else's arousal ever. This is really, really important. So as we're healing collectively our relationship with eros and arousal and all that deliciousness, part of that, those 5 stages of erotic evolution, they're so crucial and important because we need more and more mature people who understand sexuality not just as a form of exchange or currency, who understand sexuality as something that they need to be responsible for. So here's the thing. We live in a time where sexual freedom is very high. But that also comes with the responsibility of respecting what that is. And it's not a frivolous thing to engage sexually. It's actually a very deep experience. And for a lot of women, it's harder for a casual experience. I mean, some women love casual experiences, but there's a lot of women, at least in my community, who have a very hard time with that, and it's okay. So what I want to do on this Desire Song of Eros, this live training I'm doing on Tuesdays, we're going to dive a lot deeper into these issues because I feel they're really important. The great thing about Tuesday's call is that it's a private group. It's not live in public. It's a private Zoom group. And you'll be able to ask questions and participate in a really powerful way. So I think it's an ideal time if you've been following me or if you've read the book, Desire, my little book. And if you're just jumping on, that's this little book. Or if you've done any kind of exploration in the direction of spirituality and sexuality and sexual techniques and sexual practices or any kind of exploration in that realm, definitely come because we're going to take things, we're going to deepen our understanding of how those things, like where they are in context to our own self as a sexual being, and where is it that we want to move forward. I mean, some of the most powerful women, even now, some of my friends, myself, there's an ongoing inquiry around this powerful song. And I say in my book that it's essential. And I've had a few women come to me and say, I never feel it, so I feel shamed by this statement. And there's a lot packed into that one sentence. Shutting down the Song of Eros, in my experience, isn't actually going to be very healthful. It actually diminishes vitality. Actually, I remember reading in the telomeres research, if you know what the telomeres are, they're the ends of the DNA, and they shorten, and as they shorten, we age and we get ill, and there's actually ways to reverse that process. So the sort of like anti-aging kind of reversal practices that you can do. But one of the things that was looked at was sexuality and fulfillment in sexuality, and it's actually really important. So even if sexuality is a pain point, if there's trauma there, if there's just lack of education, like you'd love to, but you just don't know, those are all indications that we do need to lean in and have a deeper conversation. But it's hard, right, to have these deeper conversations when we still globally regard sexuality as a currency. So I want you to start regarding it as your own aliveness, that you were born with it, and it will be with you till your last breath, that it's something that you can have a direct and conscious and beautiful and powerful and loving relationship with, even starting today. And that when you harness this turn on, it can feel physical, and you may not have a partner, or it may not be the right moment or appropriate, or etc. There's a lot of reasons why we wouldn't jump into the act of sex as soon as we feel arousal. But you can harness that turn on and literally use it to re-energize your body, stay vital, stay youthful, and energize the things in your life that really matter to you. There are a few things in our life, and I hope you've been thinking about it. Usually this is the season in the beginning of January where we really think about this year is going to be about this, and we set some intentions, or we really think about what's important, what deeply matters. So you can use your lit upness, your turn on, to fuel your vision of what's possible this year. And those are the types of things we will talk about more deeply on Tuesday in the Desire Song of Eros training that I'm doing. I'm just going to see who's here and say hello. There's some beautiful people. There's Joe, Yelena, Kate, my husband, Sol, Teresa, Maya, Christina. Really beautiful. Some of you I don't see. So if you're here and I didn't say your name, I apologize, but it's just not listed. So I want to thank you all for coming today. I think it's a very important discussion, and I want to go a lot deeper with you. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that. I'm going to put the link in the comment section. And even our most powerful women leaders right now, I'm privy to understanding and knowing this. There is work to be done personally, deeply, on our sexual turn on desire, on our bodies. I know very few who have escaped sexual trauma. And I want all of you to understand that you don't have to remain in that state of pain or that state of ignorance, that you can actually liberate those things. I did it, and I've helped so many women do this, that we can actually go into the journey of a full reclamation. And when we do that, then there's liberation. And it's not just for now, this is for the rest of your life. This relationship with your turn on, with your sexuality, is for the rest of your life. As you know, I'm an advocate for firmly believing that sexuality has no age. I think sexuality and ageism is BS. So it is wise, if you are interested in a higher quality of life, of being able to more fully enjoy your moments and have a sense of vitality and not be afraid of your desire or other people's desire, then there is an invitation to go deeper into understanding this. One of the ways, like I said, is definitely check out this little book and read that chapter. The Desire Song of Eros is my longest chapter in this book. I dedicate a lot of time on this topic because it's so crucial. And this is a part of our lives that can, like I said, be very overwhelming, but it's also a part of our lives that we can use to harness and become very intimate and beloveds of. So thank you for your time today. I noticed there are no questions in the live section. So if you're watching this as a replay and you have questions, definitely leave them. I always read every comment, every question. I love that. I love the connection that happens when I do these videos. Thank you, everybody. Again, happy New Year. And definitely check out the link and come. If you're a woman, it's a women's only Desire Song of Eros. I believe it's only for women. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sony. But I think it's only for women at this point. But coming on and talking to this need, this calling, this urge, the pure form of your desire, not the conditioned form of it, but the pure essence of it. We're going to go deeply into that. And if you are a man, I'm so grateful that you're here. Your turn on is incredibly important and essential. And if it is a woman's only event and you want more information, leave me some comments because there could be some resources I can point you to. All right, everybody, have an amazing rest of your day, and we'll talk really soon. I adore you, and come check out the training next week, Tuesday the 7th. Bye, everybody.